Okay, so this is the second video for the Breval Sonata. I'm still focusing on measure 1 to 22, okay? At this point, you've done the chords with just the top note, and you've been playing at around 80 for the quarter notes, and without the trills and without the grace notes. So the next step is three things. One, we're going to add the second note to the chords, and at measure 22 you just have that. So we're going to add the second note. We're still not going to add the third or the fourth yet. Okay, we have to work on that separately. But the good news is, if you can do the top two notes, then actually the rest will become a little bit easier, because the only additional notes you'll play are open strings. You're going to play the open G and then the open G and C for the last chord. Okay, so we're really at the most, I guess the most difficult part for these chords. Okay, so that's one. The second thing is, now I want to add the trills. We're still going to leave out the grace notes because I want to do it step by step. Okay, and then the final thing is, we're going to speed it up to about 100, I would say. 120 around there is where you would want to be ultimately, but 100 is a good spot to be in for the next step. Okay, and then of course we're going to add some dynamics, because you have to really make it interesting, and there are a lot of sort of repetitive sections, and you never want to play the same thing twice exactly the same way. You want to do something different. So we'll take a look at that. Okay. So for the chords, the first thing I suggest is that you practice playing two strings at the same time with the retakes that are written in. And up until this point, you've been told just to play on a single string, and anytime you played accidentally another string at the same time, you were told that's not good. You know, no extra strings, make sure it's just one string. That's true if there's only one string that's written, but in this case, since we're playing chords, you have to play more than one string at a time. And now you have to train your hand to do the very thing that you were told not to do, which is play two strings at the same time. Okay, so the first thing I would do is just open strings. Really be careful about not hearing any no unevenness with the strings. It should, from the very beginning all the way to the tip, be completely even between those two strings. It's kind of hard as you go farther out to really control the bow. So use your ears, retake. All three of those should really be completely even. Yeah, and really remember that when we first did, I asked you to do full bow. Same thing here. Once you get used to playing on two strings evenly, try to have that same kind of character, yeah? Because eventually that's what we're going to build up to. Okay, so let's say you've done that. The next step is to figure out how to use your left hand. Now, I will say that with these chords, especially the C major ones, the first and the third one, typically in first position, your first finger is probably going to want to be closer to your second finger. So oftentimes I'll hear something like this, where the E, the first finger on the D string, is too sharp. So really make sure it stays exactly where it needs to be, and then get the C, and you can see that the distance between 1 and 2 is quite big, yeah, because we're in first position, and you want to keep that throughout when you play both, all three of those. Yeah, okay. So when you're doing this, I would recommend first tuning the E, and at this point I think using a tuner is a good idea. Eventually you're going to be using your ears, tune the E to the G, and then the C to the E, but that's a little complicated. So just for now, take out your tuner and tune the E, tune the C. Make sure neither finger moves. Once you find the E, it can't move. Okay, don't squeeze like crazy, but just enough so that you're not moving around while you're trying to find the C. Yeah. And this is the first time you're really testing your hearing by hearing two pitches at the same time. So that's another video in and of itself to be able to tune two pitches at the same time. But for now, I think it's close enough to, if you can tune the E to a tuner, tune the C to the tuner, and then play it together, it'll be pretty close to being in tune. So I think that's the first step. Yeah. Get that. The next step is you got to get your first finger onto the A string, right? Not on the D, on the A string because it's an open D, and then back to 1 and 2. Okay, so that's a little tricky. 1 and 2, 0 and 1, and then 1 and 2 again. Yeah, and I would practice that over and over until you get the pattern comfortable in your hand. Because when you first try it, if you're not used to double stops, that can be a little bit tricky. And also make sure that when you're changing your left hand, you don't hear anything like that. Really make sure it should just be two notes, almost as if there are two cellists playing at the same time. One playing the C and one playing the E. Yeah. Okay. Eventually we'll add the. But first, let's get these two step by step. Okay. All right. So the trill at measure 6, you were doing. Okay, you've got the basic rhythm. Now let's add the trill. So that sounds like this. Okay, and then we'll add the grace notes later. But that's really the basic trill that you want to have on the F. Okay. One thing that's really important with trills is that it's about clarity, really being able to hear all the notes. So it's not about how many trills you can fit in. So I don't really need to hear that, especially if it sounds messy or unclean. It's better to just stick with 1 or 2 trills. Okay, it's the exact same sort of effect, except if it's cleaner, it'll sparkle more. And this is a decoration, so you really want it to sparkle. So just practice. Make sure you're lifting both the 3rd and the 4th finger, okay? Because the trill's on F and G. Okay, and try not to squeeze any of your fingers too much, because the trill has to feel pretty light in order for you to get your finger to come up quickly. It's the same thing in measure 19. So yeah, so try not, you don't have to do 15 trills. That might look impressive, but it doesn't sound good. So that's clean and simple. That's the basic rhythm. It's the same trill actually as the one that we just did, so it's 2/4 on both the D string and the A string. Okay. When you are practicing trills, it's a good idea to do what I call the trill exercise, which basically goes through all of the finger combinations that you could have between any two fingers, and I have. All my students go through it from the very beginning. It really helps with the shape of your hand and also being able to work each finger independently, especially the upper 2, 3rd, and 4th fingers. They tend to not want to work independently, so this is a really good exercise to do. Basically, put on your metronome. This is about 110. Maybe it's too fast. Maybe you can't hear it. Let's make it louder. Okay. So what I do is I go through every combination starting with open strings. So it looks like this. Yeah, so those are all of the open string combinations, and I'm just doing it on 1 string. string now, I ask my students to do it on D, A, G, and C in that order. Okay. So then the next combinations all start with first finger. So you have three possibilities: 1, 2, 1, 3, and 1, 4. So it looks like this: 3, 4. Next combinations all starts with 2, and you only have 2 fingers left. You have 2, 3, and 2, 4. Yeah? And then the final one starts on 3. You only have 1 left, which is 3, 4. Yeah? So that goes through all the basic combinations. You can also do extensions eventually. A lot of different variations, but I think the basic groupings that I just showed you are really where you want to start. Do it on the D string, the A string, G string, C string, all 4, and really make sure you're together with the metronome. We were looking for even rhythm when it comes to trills. Yeah. One thing that I think is really important when it comes to trills is that I think a lot of people tend to think that the trill is really a downward motion, and that's true. Of course, you need to bring the finger down to get the trill to alternate, but I think oftentimes people forget the lifting motion is also important. And actually, if you can have this sort of spring-like motion when you're lifting your fingers, that will really help make the trill sound cleaner, and also you'll be able to do it faster. And especially when it gets to 3/4 and the 2/4, those tend to be a little bit harder. And the reason I can do it like that is because I'm really thinking about lifting the finger really high. The one last thing I will say that will help with trills is that you want to be balanced on the upper note, the note that you're trilling, lifting and dropping. That's the finger you want to be balanced on. Okay, and by balance I mean if you were hanging from the fingerboard, this is a really good way to know if you're balanced on a certain finger. You don't need to pull, just use the weight of your arm. See, can you hang on each finger? And you can see that I would adjust my weight based on what finger I am on. Yeah. So if I'm doing a 2/4 trill, I'm not balanced on my second finger because the 4th finger is the one that's doing the work. The second finger just stays there. And you can hear it's struggling. So what I do is I balance on my 4th finger. My second finger is now sort of in an uncomfortable position because I'm favoring the 4th finger, but it's really better because I don't have to do anything with my second finger. It does nothing. It's the 4th finger that does all the work. It's the same if you're doing 2/3. Balance on the 3rd finger. And 2 and 1, you balance on the second finger. It probably makes more of a difference when you're dealing with the higher fingers, 3rd and 4th fingers. Probably doesn't make that much of a difference with 1 and 2 because they're both so strong. Okay, so try practicing the trills cleanly and slowly, and remember, it's not about how many trills you can fit into a single beat. It's about how clean those trills are, how brilliant they sound. Okay, all right, and then finally, I just want you to start adding in dynamics. Yeah, for example, when you see measure 7 and 8, they're identical, right? The notes are the same. Now you could play them twice exactly the same, but I think what's written in is a good suggestion, which is essentially you're doing an echo. The first one starts loud, second one less. So you're doing something interesting with the exact same material, and when you're doing that throughout a piece, it can really make it seem like, one, there's something really cool going on, but also that there's like this dialogue, it's like you're having a conversation. Yeah, and then the audience can sense sense that there's this discussion going on with just the sound that you're making. So try to follow all of the dynamics that are written in, crescendos, decrescendos, the mezzo pianos, mezzo fortes, and see if you can really make this piece interesting. And I think if you can do that, you'll really be an impressive player. Okay, good luck.